Welcome to Coffee Corner Motorsport. I'm Terry and I'm going to be taking you through all of the latest from the world of Formula One. So, let's get into it. Stefano Domenicali has a message for Max Verstappen, and it's not a subtle one either. Red Bull have reshuffled their entire technical structure this morning. The FIA will meet on Monday about changes to the current regulations, and somebody, to be brutally honest, is lying about the TV viewing numbers. It's Friday the 17th of April 2026. This is Coffee Corner Motorsport Formula One Espresso News. Grab your coffee, we got lots to discuss. Wow. First up, welcome to the show. This is, of course, the first time that I've tried this live on YouTube. This is a complete new setup. It could go horribly wrong. I have no idea what I'm doing. So please, if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. But first up, remember, there will be a subscribe button, a like button, ring the bell, get notified whenever I go live, because every single subscriber helps make this channel grow. So, let's get into what we got, shall we? Starting off with, of course, the top story. Stefano Domenicali has come out and said that the sport is not bigger than any one person. In an exclusive interview with Motorsport.com published today, Formula One CEO Stefano Domenicali revealed that he's had constructive talks with Max Verstappen about the 2026 regulations. He told Motorsport.com that the sport is bigger than any single person within it, and he made clear that those words apply to absolutely everybody on the Formula One grid. No one is excluded. He confirmed that Max Verstappen has been actively involved in discussions this week, and he called him very keen to give his suggestions to how improvements could be made. But Domenicali also warned against what he called a negative, confrontational approach, saying it doesn't give value to anyone and it isn't good for the sport in both the medium or the long term. He confirmed that Monday's April the 20th meeting will discuss Miami adjustments and that bigger changes for 2027 are also part of that conversation. He also revealed why the 50-50 power split exists, which was at the time the regulations being written to attract different automotive industry suppliers, and of course they were moving towards electrification. And he said, personally, expect the next cycle to shift back towards sustainable fuels and a stronger internal combustion engine as part of the changes. So, I suppose for me, there's a couple of things here. Is publicly telling your biggest star that the sport is bigger than them the right move? Or is it just essentially pushing somebody out the door? Because ultimately, yes, no one is bigger than the sport. Absolutely, I agree with that one. But these are multi-superstars. These are the people who are driving your profits, they're driving your viewing figures, and they are why people are tuning in week after week. Going up against them just doesn't feel like it's the biggest, smartest business move ever done. And Domenicali is framing, of course, this as being constructive, but Max Verstappen, as we know, is being very outspoken about the current regulations. He's obviously referred to them as Formula One on steroids, Mario Kart, all of these things. This is from somebody who's blatantly telling you that his future doesn't belong in Formula One currently. And of course, this 50-50 split being a political decision, yes, he's admitted it, but why are the drivers, the public, paying the price for manufactured politics within Formula One? So I suppose to me, it's about talking about where does this go? I mean, Domenicali is always going to bring out the natural sort of, party line. He's always going to tell it. Why wouldn't he? At the end of the day, that's his job. He's the CEO of course, Formula One. And of course, with regards to that, he is the person who is always going to never speak negatively about the sport. His job is the commercial side of Formula One. He doesn't belong to the FIA. He belongs to Liberty Media. Their job is to push profits, push viewing figures, push the narrative that they want to. He's not going to sit here and go, oh, actually, we've made a big mistake on this one. And ultimately, they're going to try and hang this on the FIA in terms of regulations, but going up against Max doesn't feel like it's a good move. I mean, what Max is saying has got some validation. We're in a situation now where we could lose three of the biggest superstars in Formula One. You've got, obviously, Fernando Alonso coming towards the end of his career, Aston Martin's current performance. You've got Lewis Hamilton in the twilight of his career. Yes, there's a few more years left, potentially, especially if that Ferrari is good, but he's come to the end of it. And then you've also got Max Verstappen. These three superstars are what drive those viewing figures, which in turn drive that commercial profit, which in turn drive the profit that Liberty Media make. Going up against them just doesn't feel like it's the smartest decision that anyone's ever made. Intrigued to know what people think about this, whether or not you think this is a good move or not. If you are new and you do want to stick anything in chat, feel free to do so. We'll discuss this one as well. That's the whole point of this, is the reason I brought this onto YouTube was I've done this for quite a while now, since probably about 2022 now. Coffee Corner Motorsport's been going. And the biggest thing for me was when you're filming these things, you don't get any interaction. And you can film one of these new shows, you can do a podcast, but the biggest thing missing is what people are actually thinking. So the whole point behind this, bringing it onto YouTube, was first and foremost, actually, can we get this in a way where people can be involved in it, can give their opinion, and we can discuss it, we can maybe see some what people are thinking, and does it shape the narrative? Because ultimately, I'm just a guy in a shed, and what I'm thinking isn't necessarily right. And I know that people have got a great opinion, and I love hearing different people's view on it. So if you are new here, feel free to drop something in the chat. And yeah, let's kick on, because we've got lots to cover tonight. So next up, we've got Max Verstappen talking about GP going, of course, to McLaren. Now, this was a big move from last week. This was the big announcement that came out. But in terms of what it means going forward, so Max Verstappen has basically broken up his silence on GP's move to McLaren. He's been speaking publicly for the very first time about the announcement, and he's revealed that he gave GP his approval on what he called a fantastic offer. So we know that GP is obviously heading to McLaren. Verstappen revealed that he gave GP his approval, and Planet F1 today reported that Verstappen was asked for his blessing before that move was confirmed. Now, his father, Joss, has obviously separately told Race Express that the family known about this for some time, and that they told GP to grab it with both hands. And Joss also addressed a question which everyone at the moment is currently asking, whether or not, of course, Max will currently leave Formula One. He's hinted that things have changed, especially after 4 championships, but he's also gone on to say that that final decision is, of course, up to Max. But he also added, personally, I think he'll carry on. This is a weird one, because obviously we've got Max all them years ago now talking about his relationship with GP. He's talked about ultimately how once GP goes, he would obviously stop in the sport. Josh will marry and will obviously manage that narrative that he's got around Max. We got damage limitation before Miami, and Verstappen gave GP his blessing. Now, that leads to a few questions here. What is going on at Red Bull? Because does this mean that Max is checking out, in the sense of he's already lined up where he's going, and that he sees this as a really good deal for GP? GP knows what Max is doing, and the two of them have sort of discussed this, and Max has already made his mind up over what happens next. Because ultimately, what we don't know is what is the future for Max Verstappen, because that Red Bull clearly isn't performing. He's clearly not happy with the regulations. Max wants to win. He's a born racer. He's always talked about this one. I personally feel that a move to Mercedes is definitely on the cards still. I also believe a move away from Formula One is on the cards. I don't really buy into that talk we saw last week from Ralf Schumacher saying the move to McLaren. It feels like a move to McLaren is something which would upset the apple cart for McLaren. I don't really see where he fits into all of this. I don't really see where actually Max Verstappen to McLaren is a good deal for any of those parties involved. You've obviously got Lando, who likes being the number one driver. I know people will say he's got equal status with Oscar, but he is the current world champion. I feel that out of the two drivers, if they had to make a choice between the two, I feel that what you'd have is Zach Brown would choose Lando. I don't think any of us can sit here and sort of doubt that one. The history they've got business partnerships together. It makes sense that Max going to McLaren doesn't kind of tick a box. Why would Lando encourage that? He wouldn't want to be on equal status. Max doesn't want to go somewhere where he's got equal status with someone. He likes being the number one driver. We've seen that from his time at Red Bull. He's not afraid to admit that one. So I feel that Max to McLaren is a bit of a sort of nothing story for me. I don't believe he's following GP. Now, Max to obviously Mercedes, that's got some legs to it. We know they're doing the GT racing. We know they're doing all of the stuff outside of this. We know that a move for Max going to Mercedes is a blockbuster move in terms of what it brings you commercially. Now, I know that Kimi Antonelli is there, and I know that George Russell is there. They're obviously leading the Constructors' Championship. They're both head-to-head in the Drivers' Championship. You kind of sit here and go, but why? Toto likes to play the field. If you look at what he's got with his driver contracts, last year he had both drivers who he could have tied to a long-term contract. He decided not to. He decided to give them both short-term contracts. Now, you only do that when you want to keep your options open. So I keep reading comments all the time saying Toto wouldn't go for Max. But if you're so hell-bent on this Kimi and George partnership, why on earth did he actually have a deal where he gave both of them a short-term contract? It doesn't make any sense to me. You only give drivers a short-term contract if you're seeing what else is out there. Now, we know we've got, 13, 14 drivers that contract at the end of 2026. So silly seasons obviously went to kick off. It's kind of waiting for someone like Max to make a move. Equally, I feel that Max moving away from Formula One is also an option. I think that if he is disillusioned, he will walk away. He doesn't strike me as someone who would leave and come back. I don't think for 1 minute he's that sort of driver. I think once Max makes his mind up and he leaves Formula One, I think that will be it. I don't think we'll see him take a sabbatical. I don't feel that's his style at all. I feel he's got too much going on outside of the sport. So for me, if he does decide to walk away, he will. I feel he might take a big money move to Mercedes with a competitive car. And also what goes with that. So a maybe ambassador deal, ironically the same thing that Lewis couldn't get. Maybe a tie-in with the GT racing, all of those things. It feels like actually, is there a way where Max and Mercedes could be on the cards? If it happens, I would imagine George Russell would be the one to make way. Mercedes put a lot into Kimi Antonelli. I know that both drivers are technically Mercedes junior drivers, but you kind of feel that Toto's been almost bringing Kimi through as the next Max Verstappen. I feel that he would see a move where Max comes in for a couple of years, big money contract, George makes way, Kimi learns from Max. Yes, there might be a bit of them going head-to-head to start off with, but then actually Max would then retire and Kimi would make that step up. They didn't want to put Kimi in the car as early as they did. They did it because Lewis made that move to Ferrari. So I feel that they've gone with it. They're happy that they've got it now. He's learned a lot from last season in terms of all of the stuff that went wrong with Kimi's introduction to Formula One. And I feel that that would be the right way for both of them to do it. I think, yes, it would be harsh on George if you consider what he's given to the team and also what he's actually brings to the team. But I also feel that Toto's quite ruthless in that sense. I don't think for 1 minute that he would actually just think twice about it. And I don't think winning the World Championship would be enough to actually save it. We've seen it over the years with obviously Mansell. We've seen it with Damon Hill when he went at Williams. Excuse me. So, yeah, I feel for me, if it's going to be anyone, it would be George that makes way. But I also feel that Max could equally just decide to just up and walk away from the sport. I don't think he's interested in those big records that we hear people talking about, those 7 Michael Schumacher, 7 Lewis Hamilton records at all. I think that Max is the sort of driver that as he gets close to them, yes, he sees that as something to do in terms of chase them down. But I don't feel that's his fundamental reason to why he's in it. But who knows? Let me know what you think about that one. Do you think that a Max move to Mercedes could be on the cards? Do you think he's leaving the sport? Do you think he's going to stay at Red Bull? What if Red Bull actually get it right? What if actually we know that a lot of their issues currently are in the weight-saving department? We know that the car's overweight, but the engine is supposed to be quite good. Is there a way that we see like we saw last year when Red Bull got on top of their car and actually brought that into line, that it got more competitive? He managed to chase down the championship. He managed to actually go to a point where they closed the gap to 2 points it was by the end of the season. So do we live in a world where Red Bull actually, with that Red Bull Ford engine, get the car right, get the chassis right, and actually Max Verstappen comes much more back into contention and is more happy at Red Bull? Or is this the case of all these changes are a sign of if not when Max decides to leave? But either way, with regards to GP going to McLaren, I don't think it's going to be as late as 2028. I don't see any reason why Red Bull would do that. They leave themselves really open. We know that, yes, there's going to be some garden leave. It's going to be negotiated now that it's all out in the open. I feel for me, it will get towards mid-end of this season. They'll start kind of blocking him out. They'll start kind of, not inviting him to meetings. He holds such a strategy role, an engineering role. He's someone who's going to be really hard to exclude from meetings and then put him on the pit wall. So I think for me, it's going to be a case of they're going to say, actually, we're going to put him out, put him on garden leave and let him join McLaren earlier. But intrigued your thoughts on that one. And coming up, keeping on the Red Bull theme, we've got obviously the Red Bull restructure. This one is a little bit controversial. So Red Bull obviously issued that statement this morning. I don't know if you saw it. It was an official statement confirming 2 main changes to their technical structure. And this is effective immediately. Ben Waterhouse has been promoted to Chief Performance and Design Engineer. He will take on responsibility for design and vehicle performance, and he will report directly into Technical Director Pierre Wache. Now, Pierre's actually been under a lot of pressure with the current performance from Red Bull. Now, in terms of Ben Waterhouse, he's been since 2024 at Red Bull, and from the 1st of July, they will also get Andrea Landau, who will join as Head of Performance, reporting to Waterhouse. Now, he's currently the Deputy Technical Director at Racing Bulls. Now, we know, obviously, that they are getting... the name's going to go from me now. Who was Dan Fallows. Sorry, complete mind blank there. So Dan Fallows is going from Aston Martin to VCOB. He was obviously at Red Bull originally, then they poached him to go to Aston Martin, and now he's done a full circle and going to VCOB. So Racing Bulls are going to make that switch pretty much straight away. Laurent Mekies himself obviously come from Racing Bulls last year into the Red Bull team. And this is this is the problem with this. There is no garden leave beyond this. So we just talked about, obviously, GP going on garden leave. And this is where Zach Brown has got a real bee in his bonnet. He's got a real sort of issue about all of this, where he says if you've got two teams in Formula One, actually, when this happens, you've got a situation now where they will just make a switch. They did it when they sacked Christian Horner. Like Mecchi, literally in the next day or so, was taking up that Red Bull role. Now, you don't share information deliberately. You don't share information on the fact that, yes, you don't give them your CAD designs. But if you've got so many people going between two organisations who belong ultimately to the same organisation with no garden leave, that is what Zach Brown's calling this unfair advantage, is what he's calling this bit where this is where he fundamentally disagrees with having two teams in Formula One. These are the advantages, whereas then themselves have had to wait for, like, so Will Courtney to go to obviously McLaren from Red Bull. They're now waiting for GP to go. And then here's Red Bull just turn around and go, actually, we've got someone at VCOB, and what we're going to do, we're going to pick them up and we're going to chuck them into the main Red Bull side tomorrow. We're going to rob our junior team, our sister team, put them in, fix any gaps that we got, let them just go about it. And I suppose for me, it's where the sort of grey areas around having two teams in Formula One, because according to the regulations, you can obviously have it. There's no issue with it. That's carried on for the Concord Agreement. That's going to carry on into the next foreseeable future, so at least until 2030. We obviously know that you've got Mercedes looking to buy Alpine. It kind of feels like this is what they're doing. It feels like they want a team where they've got a lot of influence over. Yes, they've got engine deals with a lot of teams, but they've got no ownership in anybody else. By holding that ownership in Alpine, they would have a similar situation to Red Bull. Okay, it wouldn't be the same because they're not only two teams, it's only a part share, but even so, it would give them considerable influence over Alpine if they owned a share in it. And I think this is where they're looking at this and saying, well, hold on, it's that age-old in Formula One. If you can't beat them, you join them, don't you? So I don't know. For me, it's one of those where I see the benefits of it. I kind of feel long term that Red Bull may sell one of their teams if the profits start sliding a bit as well. We know they've gone a lot more commercial since Dietrich has obviously passed away, and it's now gone to this Austrian board, which is what's led to all of these departures, this complete restructuring they're going through, this turmoil. This all stems from, obviously, Oliver Mitsov has taken over. He's now got this motor racing board that was never there before. Before it was Dietrich Mateschitz, and he went straight to Christian Horner, went to Helmut Marko. That's all gone. Red Bull Austria have now wrestled it all back. Now, do we have a situation where, if there's a situation where we've got this and somebody comes into the sport and says, actually, here's a big money offer, or say Ford, for example, want to buy back in, we know they got the engine partnership, so if they decide they want to take a team back on because business is booming. We saw this week that Cadillac was valued at 1.4 billion. We haven't even done half a season on the Formula One grid, and that's a brand new Formula One team coming in valued at over $1 billion. Okay, they've had to spend that to get to Formula One, but you can still see the money rising. The average team is worth, $2-3 billion. Like it's a business sport where ultimately you've got a situation where would Red Bull just sell one of them and go, here we go, we'll sell one, bang, here, keep the main team, sell one off, keep the engine supply going. We become a works team, but still supply that team as part of the deal and pocket, what would be an astronomical amount by doing that and save these politics. But then when you've got a situation like this going where they can go and rob their junior team for staff, it kind of makes sense to keep them, doesn't it? But let me know what you think about that one. Crunch meeting, Monday, FIA regulations. This one's one of these where I don't know what they're going to do about this one. So the FIA's April the 20th high-level meeting will bring together team principals, power unit manufacturers, the FIA and Formula One management. It follows the technical sessions that we saw on the 15th to 16th of April. And at the moment, their preferred options are more tweaks rather than wholesale changes. Now, according to motorsport.com and race fans, the focus will be on energy management, specifically addressing that dangerous closing speeds between a harvesting car and a deploying car that we obviously saw between Franco Colapinto and Ollie Bearman, and improving the qualifying so drivers can push the car to the limit. The FIA has also confirmed that any changes will be going straight to an Evo and will be ratified within days, and then will be in place before Miami. Multiple sources are cautioning against any major changes, and this is more refinement rather than a fundamental reset. Again, this is a weird one because we all know that they've got a problem with the regulations. It feels like the FIA and Formula One are kind of a bit of logheads with each other. And what I mean by that is So the FIA are getting a lot of flack for changing the regulations. They're getting a lot of heat from the fans. We know there's issues with qualifying. We know there's issues with cars not being able to go flat out in qualifying. We know it feels like there's too much electrification. The FIA are deliberately getting the brunt of that, whereas Formula One are kind of escaping a bit. And Formula One was the one who ultimately made this happen. They were the ones who said we need ratification to move towards electric so that we can have Audi in the sport, that we can have Ford coming into the sport along with Red Bull, obviously, Honda coming back as well, Cadillac coming in. It was Formula One who, through their commercial deals, promised this electrification and promised this to these manufacturers. Now, if the FIA suddenly changed the goalposts on this, what does that mean for those teams? What does that mean for that agreement? Does it mean that those teams would adapt because they've seen the value of the money? Or does it mean that what will happen is these teams will go, do you know what? That's not what we were promised. That's not what you said we would do. That's not what was agreed. So we're going to change it on that point of view. I think realistically, the change is what we're going to have. We're going to see a change in the qualifying power because that seems to be the biggest headache and the easiest one to solve. I feel that with the engines, we're going to get more of a refinement rather than a change because we've got this situation now where if they make wholesale changes, you run the risk of making teams stronger. So just because you can turn around and say, we're going to change the battery deployment, you could actually have a negative impact on the Formula One grid because you could put in a situation where you suddenly got Mercedes getting even stronger and even more dominant. And I think that's where the FIA are suitably concerned. They're saying that if we just change the battery deployment and Mercedes engines are so good, we could just make them even stronger and make them more dominant, which is not what anybody wants at all. You've also got the added pressure of how do the teams adapt their engines to any changes. I think we've already seen trials where we're going to drop the harvesting ratio down, the megajoule ratio down. I think that's more realistic. We've also got, obviously, Monaco and the compression ratio tests. I think that the FIA will want to see if that's going to change anything in terms of, obviously, Mercedes and the engines. I personally don't think it will. I think that the Mercedes engine passes the new tests. I think they've already got that mapped in. I don't think that that's a problem at all. So I feel that's kind of one of those ones where the FIA said we're going to make changes and we've got this big test coming in. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to actually change what that grid does because that fix is already in place, if that makes sense. I don't think that Mercedes will run it even now for a couple of months and then run a risk of not passing that test. So for me, that feels like it's a very public political play that's made the FIA look good, like they're clamping down on Mercedes, whereas in reality, it's not going to make any difference. We know, obviously, we've got the AGUO, which is, if you don't know, that's the additional development upgrade options. Now, at the moment, you're in an engine freeze, so you can't actually develop your engine at all. What you can do, you can bring reliability fixes. And then after 7 races, if you're 2% off the benchmark, which is naturally Mercedes, or 4% off the benchmark, you get basically extra budgets to spend, extra tokens to spend on both developing your car, or developing your engine, I'd say, rather than your car, and also developing what you can bring. So if it's 4%, you get some extra this year and next year to catch up. If it's just 2%, you get some more extra this year. Now, we've been told that Ferrari are kind of borderline for it. We know that Audi will qualify. We know that Honda will definitely qualify, obviously, because they can't even finish a race at the moment, although they did finish last time out, I must admit. And ironically, Ferrari look like they're going to qualify, but Red Bull look like they're going to miss out because all of theirs is in the chassis, not the actual engine itself. So Ferrari have accused Mercedes of playing politics with this. They think that Mercedes are deliberately stifling their performance so that they don't get these upgrade opportunities, which is obviously something which could very realistically happen. We've then got Ferrari feel that they can close the gap with this and the upgrades that they're bringing to Miami. Every team's going to be bringing upgrades to Miami. Everyone's going to be bringing some stuff with them. It's not going to be a situation where no one's going to bring it. We've had 5 weeks off. The teams have still been working. The teams have still been working behind the scenes to bring upgrades. There's been no factory shutdown. So every single team is going to arrive in Miami with an upgrade package. The question is, what's that upgrade package going to bring and how much does it close the gap to Mercedes? Because whilst everyone's moving towards Mercedes, Mercedes is still moving forward because they can. And that's the point. Some teams have got to rely on other things. So you'd look at Red Bull, you look at Williams. They're going to be looking very much about stripping weight from the cars and then hopefully bring an upgrade with it. McLaren are looking to get that Mercedes integration sorted so they can bring upgrades to the chassis side of it. Ferrari are apparently bringing the whole upgrade. Ferrari do these big upgrades. So teams like Mercedes will do a little upgrade where they bring bit by bit by bit. That way, if something goes wrong, they know exactly what's going on with that car. They know exactly what was put on that car. They know exactly how to reverse engineer it back out. Ferrari tend to do these big statements. They tend to do this big package where they go, bang, here it is. This is what we're going to do. What that gives you is if it works, you get an instant performance boost. If it doesn't work, you've then got the situation of you've got to be able to try and find a way to figure out which part of that upgrade didn't work. Because invariably, if an upgrade doesn't work, it's one thing that's thrown the whole lot off. It's either a correlation problem or a part problem. And if you've got a situation where you don't know which part it is, you could spend literally months, weeks, loads of money in a cost cap era trying to figure out what that is. What Mercedes learned the hard way, obviously through zero side pods in the last set of regulations, was if you bring little and often, what happens then is you've got a situation where you bring stuff in, you put it on the car, you test that one part, and then if that works, you bring in the next part, and if it doesn't work, you can take that off, revert back to the base of what you know, and then try it again. Or you can try different other parts. We saw it last year with the floor quite a lot, where they brought a floor in. I think for Belgium they did it. That didn't work, so then they took that floor away. But ultimately, the FIA know that they don't want to make wholesale changes. They don't want a situation where actually they bring a raft of stuff to the teams. They want to appease the fans in terms of what we get. I think they're going to try and stop the super clipping, which will be a different energy ratio. And I think they're going to do something around the energy deployment in qualifying. And they're the two things I think we're going to see. And then the rest will be reliant on what comes at the next points. But what have you thought so far? There's a lot of talk about this artificial overtaking, a lot of talk about whether or not it is genuine overtaking. I personally have struggled with this one quite a bit. Now, I'm not a fan of the new regulations in the sense of everything they bring, but I do think there are some good things. So for a start, I like the way that the cars can follow close to each other for a number of laps without losing downforce, without losing drag, and without compromising themselves. I like overtakes rather than DRS trains. So what I mean by that is I get the yo-yo effect, I get the energy deployment effect, I get why people are annoyed about that. But what I don't get is I would rather see some action on the track rather than a chain of DRS cars that are just floating one after another, no one passing. And I also think back to when DRS first came into play. When we first saw DRS, it was far too powerful. So there were certain tracks you went to and you were like miles away. You open in DRS and you just zoom past. That was just as artificial as what it is now. And we're only 3 races into the new regulations. They will tweak it. There are some tricks they got at their sleeves. They can do things around the fuel flow. They can do things around deployment. They can do things around the X and Y zone. So that's when you active aeros on, so your front and rear wings are open. There's talk that they could even change that on the track. So at the moment, they're like the DRS zones. They're pre-designed by the FIA, so the teams can only open them at certain points. There is talk of getting rid of those zones and just saying that you can open up your rear and your front wings whenever you want to, and that will also help make things a lot differently, because by opening the rear and the front wings, it reduces the drag, it harvests energy quicker, so there are certain ways around it. So for me, I think it's going to be tweaks. I don't think there's going to be anything monumental. I'll be very surprised if we see anything major. And like I say, with regards to the engine compression row that's obviously due in Monaco, I'm not entirely convinced we're going to see major changes to that one. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that one. And then this one is interesting. So Planet F1's Thomas Mayer has reported back on April the 14th, I think it was, that TV viewership figures from the first 3 races of 2026 showed marked audience growth compared to 2025. He's saying that Australia's at 23%, China was at 30%, Japan was at 20%, and race attendance was also up across all 3 rounds. Now, Stefano Domenicali has been citing similar growth figures all week. Like I said, he's been out talking, doing the press runs, talking about everything that's great about Formula One. He would do that, obviously. But it also reminded me of a story a few weeks back, which was GP fans, I think it was. They reported a very different picture from European broadcasters, and that was specifically for the Japanese Grand Prix. They said that Canal Plus in France was down 43%, DAZN in Spain was down 49%, Germany was down 21%, Austria was down 36%, and the only country showing any growth in Europe was Italy at 36%, probably directly linked to Kimi Antonelli leading the championship, let's be honest about it. So for me, it's kind of like someone clearly isn't telling the truth. You can't have a growth and a decline. That's physically impossible. Now, what you can do is you can make figures read how you want them to read. So you can have figures being manipulated to sell your story. We've seen that before now, and both are right and both are wrong. The one things I will say is that Thomas Mayer has said that he's got his from Paddock sources, but he's not actually directly said where he's got them from. We've got a lot of things that are going to skew viewing figures for 2026. So there will be people literally coming to the sport to see what new regulations are doing. The first 3 races were non-European friendly times, and that always has an impact on the actual viewing figures as well. So a lot of people will catch up on replays. A lot of people won't watch live. A lot of people might have tuned in to, say, Australia, but obviously got annoyed with the regulations, and then they didn't actually watch the other 2 live. My dad's a prime example of that. So my dad, he was helping build the studio with me during, I want to say, the Chinese Grand Prix. Didn't even watch any of it live. Literally came over, helped me build out the studio, and then literally went back and watched the Grand Prix. Now, in terms of viewing figures, he's someone who's viewed the sport, but he didn't view it live, so therefore he wouldn't be included. We've obviously got the Apple deal in America. That's going to absolutely skew all of the figures, because you've got all these people now who have access to Formula One via the Apple account who didn't have it last year. You got people who may not have transferred over. So again, Apple will tell you that they've got a massive, phenomenal start to their season in Formula One and massive growth. How many people are just clicking because it's now on the app? So how many people in the States have suddenly seen Formula One being advertised and gone, what's this? I'm going to click and watch it. But then obviously either stay or don't stay. And I suppose for me, which one do we trust? Which one are we saying? Are we, Domenicali is not going to come out and say that, the viewing figures are down. He's going to peddle a line which talks about the viewing figures are up, as we've seen. But then those other figures are quoted sources saying that they're down. So you kind of got to go, wow, if they're quoted sources, they've got a substance to them which doesn't just say it's a Paddock source. Now, Thomas Mayer is really good at what he brings. The stuff he brings for Planet F1 actually talks about a lot of his stuff is quite factual. A lot of his stuff is up to date. So what he's being told, you'd assume is true, and there's no reason for us not to think that. So I think it's a case of, are viewing figures down? Potentially, yes. If we come back to Miami, it will do one of 2 things, because we've had such a long break. It will either pique everybody's interest again, because we've been so long without Formula One. It will turn around and say everyone will come back and turn on to see what's happening, especially if the FIA turn around and make a load of changes. If the FIA turn around and say, well, actually, we're going to introduce 3-4 changes, we're going to introduce this, we're going to introduce a party mode for qualifying, we're going to do all these things, then ultimately that's going to drive people to the sport before Miami takes underway. If then that's coupled with a few of the teams mounting to come back to Mercedes, so suddenly that gap's not as strong. We see McLaren, we see Red Bull come into mix, Ferrari with their upgrades. If we see them fighting a bit more for the lead of the race, we see them fighting for podiums a lot more. Will that then encourage more people to tune in again on the back of that as well? I think there's lots of factors there. We then head into, obviously, going head-to-head with Indy 500, with the Canadian Grand Prix. We got 2 sprint races back-to-back. As much as people may not like sprint races, for viewing figures, they tend to be a fair bit higher. Sprint races do. We've also got F2 on the calendar for all of them. We've got F1 Academy for both of them as well. So we've got a lot of on-track action for these events, and we've been starved of action. And like I say, that's going to do one of 2 things. It's either going to encourage people back to the sport, or we're going to have a situation where people are going to go, do you know what? We need to actually just leave it now, because we've gone off and watched other things. We've got IndyCar this week. We've got Formula E coming back as well. So I'm not entirely sure what this break's done for the sport. It obviously couldn't be helped. We know that Saudi Arabia is on about coming back towards the back end of the Formula One calendar. Did a video on that one. But for me, I think that it's going to do one of 2 things, isn't it? You're either going to suddenly go after 5 weeks, I want to see what everyone's doing. If the FIA announces changes, it's going to pique interest, and they're going to go, right, here we go. Or we're going to get a situation where people are going, Joe, what? I haven't missed it for 5 weeks. I'm annoyed that Mercedes is dominating. If it comes back and Mercedes are even more dominant in Miami, is that going to be a nail in the coffin for viewing figures going forward as we head into Europe? Or actually, is it a case of, as the regulations, we know that with regulations, they will get closer. We know that the teams will adapt. We know the teams will get better and better. So for me, it's kind of like a situation where, as we go through the regulations, the teams will naturally get better and more understanding. They will close the gap. We saw this before. The cars will get faster, the gap will get smaller, and eventually we will see more competition. The biggest question is, when are we going to see that? And the biggest question is, how soon before we see that? So, yeah, let me know your thoughts on that one. What do you think? Who's lying on the viewing figures? Are they down? Are they up? Or actually, is it far too early to tell? So, loads more to process. Domenicali's bigger than one person comments to Red Bull. Obviously, Red Bull been raising their own team for people. The drama's peaking off track. The FIA are going to meet before Miami. In fact, they're going to meet on Monday. I'll be back here to talk about all of this one. Like I say, if you have watched it, thank you for watching it. This is the first time I'm going live on YouTube. I've got no idea what half of these buttons do. I've got absolutely no idea what's going on with these, so it will get better, I promise. So please do me a favour, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. The plan is that I want to do these on a weekday basis. So I want to do them Monday to Friday. And what I want to do is, like I said at the beginning of the show, I want to do an interactive thing. So I want interaction in chat. I want you to ask me what you think. I want you to put your opinions in. I want us to be able to discuss it. If you haven't already followed me, please do so. I'm not only on YouTube, I'm on all social medias. I started this back in 2022, basically on TikTok, and it's grown from there. So if you don't know me by now, I'm a stay-at-home dad. We've got 4 disabled children. I decided that I needed to give up work and I needed to care for them full time. So what I did was I gave it up and I needed something to do. I needed something to basically get an escape from the world of just those caring responsibilities. So I've been a fan for over 30 years. If you follow me on social media, you'll see that I do events with my dad. I love taking my dad to events, and that's my kind of respite from the caring responsibilities. So I decided that I would make a channel about Formula One. Like I say, over 30 years, been watching my dad go back to like the Senna, the Mansell, the Schumacher eras. He got me involved in the sport, and I like facts. One of my biggest bugbears is I hate clickbaits. So I've tried to build up my channel, tried to build up my website based on reliable information. I am on all social media, so it's Coffee Corner Motorsport on every platform, and I've also got my own website, which is www.coffeecornermotorsport.com. I'll cover all motorsport series that I can, so I do IndyCar, I do F2, I also do Formula E, and also do F1 Academy, so that's all on the website. My videos tend to be more Formula 1 dominated, but I do hold accreditation with Formula E, and I also do with IndyCar as well, so I do get to go do some press conferences and get to go to some tracks. I don't get to do Formula 1 yet. It's kind of the pipe dream of what I'm trying to work towards. But like I say, I try to bring it onto a fact where everything is factual, it's reliable, it's well sourced. I try and get my stuff from the team, so I do get access to some of the team's media and also Formula 1 media as well. So I try to make sure that when I do news and I do bring stuff, it's up to date and you can believe it. And I'm not kind of dishing on any other creators out there. Far from it. There's room, I feel, for everyone. But for me, I like facts. I like stuff where I know it's reliable. I don't like opening a story and seeing a completely different story to what the headline told me. And that's kind of where my channel's been and what I've done. So if that's your sort of lane, do me a favour, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Apologies for the stream tonight. It will get better as I get used to it. Like I say, all this is new. I used to be in the shed next door, so for those who are new, so this all started in the shed with basically a cup of coffee and an iPhone, and one of the things that we tried to do, so this is a sensory cabin build that we built for our children as well. So what we've got here, we've got the studio set up, and then they can do their sensory stuff in here as well. So the idea behind it was that we had a studio, and one of the things I wanted to do was have a studio where I could bring stuff like this. So yeah, if you've enjoyed it, drop a follow, drop a comment, share the stream. I'll be back Monday. I'm going to try and do 7:30 Monday to Thursday, and then Friday I'm going to do like 9 p.m, so a little bit later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do weekends because it's really hard to commit to weekends doing live streaming when you've got race reports, races to watch and stuff like that. So I didn't want to do something which was unattainable and something where I let down everybody. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Like I say, I'll be back Monday. It'll get better. Trust me. If you have watched it, really appreciate you being here. And I will see you soon.